Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have on our friend Congressman Mark Pocan, a Democrat representing Wisconsin's 2nd Congressional District, serves on the House Appropriations Committee, co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus, and chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus. Congressman Pocan, nice to see you, my friend. We're getting close to the holidays, the end of the year, and, I don't know the 12 days of Christmas, if they're going to come up, if Trump's going to give us something, how this is going to work out. Just one bad nominee after the other.
Yeah,
Like one rapist is singing, two drunk. I mean, like, I don't want to make light of it, but it's a mess. And here's where we are. And now we have the FBI director, Christopher Wray, announcing yesterday that he's going to resign because Trump wants him to before his term is up, and as opposed to having Trump fire him, which I would have preferred because it would have created a spectacle. But Ray made his choice. So what's your reaction?
yeah. I mean, that's the way adults do. If someone new is coming in and they don't want them, they leave. So I think, he's simply doing the normal way things are done. Of course, Donald Trump, anything is it's everything but normal, right? And just like you said, many of the cabinet picks and certainly the FBI director pick. But it's going to be a wild ride. People better be able to buckle up going into January. We're, having lots of conversations, various caucuses ready for the fight that's going to come. But, they're going to have a one-seat margin for most of the first part of the year in the House because of the appointments that Donald Trump made. We actually have 215 seats. I think it's the narrowest margin in,
Hmm.
I don't know, decades and decades and decades, actually, coming into a Congress. But I'm looking at what we're doing these last few weeks going into the holidays in Congress, and I got the feeling the cluster will continue.
I mean, just yesterday there was a vote on the National Defense Budget Authorization Act, and you voted against it. I was watching some of your comments. Could you share what is in this bill? And as the Republicans just continue to fill their culture war, their bigotry in anything they can touch?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Yeah. So, generally the National Defense Authorization, I oppose because it's a bloated Pentagon budget that wastes lots and lots of money. They failed 7 audits in a row. We wouldn't allow any other agency to do that. But it's become a jobs program for most members. It's jobs in their district with defense contractors. And unfortunately, that's the way it gets looked at. But the Republicans couldn't suffice with having a bipartisan bloated Pentagon budget. They had to throw in a little extra stuffing, put a little arsenic in it, and a few other things. And there was a provision that should have been entered that allowed any military personnel to have access to IVF fertility treatment. They wouldn't allow that. And
Mhm.
then, they took away health care from trans kids. It's the first time we've seen something like this, really put into a bill that right now is moving forward to the Senate. And it's unfortunate because this is all political rhetoric, right? I mean, it should be up to we should trust the military enough to make decisions for their own kids with their healthcare providers, not having Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene make the decisions for every military family in this country, and yet that's exactly what we did. In fact, the committee itself didn't want to move forward with some of this extremist agenda. It was Mike Johnson who personally made sure that this stuff was put in because he still has to get the vote of his caucus to be chair. So, he's doing whatever they want. But it's a shame it's going forward. I hope the president actually considers vetoing it over
Hmm.
this. I think it would be the right thing to do because, let's not put a bunch of extraneous material in supposedly what's about national security. But trust me, there's plenty of other problems with the NDAA. But what they did just made it so that 124 Democrats voted against the bill.
Yeah. And I saw online, for what it's worth, I mean, there were a lot of grassroots Democrats upset with the other Democrats who voted for it because they could have passed it. They didn't need our support to pass, I think. I mean, unless there are
Yeah,
people
no, the
missing.
difficulty always is the national defense is, like I said, it's considered a jobs program by
Right.
members, the national defense bill. And there's a provision that I am very supportive, and I think every member that I've talked to is supportive of, is raising the salaries for the lowest paid military personnel by 14.5%, trying to finally bring them to some equity. We need to. So no one opposed that. It's, of course, that's for the ads they'll put against you. So some people were afraid of that, but I'm not going to trade in the families of trans kids and the people trying to get fertilization covered under their TRICARE insurance simply because Mike Johnson is going to have a white nationalist Christian flag in front of his office. That's not enough.
I agree. And I hope next you'll work on a 14% raise for me here at SiriusXM. I don't know if that's possible. We can bring it up in committee that my friend Dean Obeidallah and the other host at SiriusXM,
I don't know if I'm
Congress.
the convincer because we haven't gotten a raise for 14 years in Congress. So I'm not
Oh, that's
sure
not
you
good.
want me to be the person advocating, Dean. I would. I just don't think I'm your best bet.
Fair enough. And I'm talking to Congressman Mark Pocan. So, Congressman, you had cited on social media praising the fact that the Kroger Albertsons merger was blocked.
Yeah.
And this is something we're not going to see under Trump because mergers are good for the wealthy and the corporate executives. Less competition allows them to make more money, and then they get big buyouts and golden parachutes. Mergers are anti-consumer. So this is very
Yeah.
pro-consumer. Can you share a little bit about why you were so happy that this merger got blocked?
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5 companies account for 60% of the food distribution in this country. And when
Wow.
you have it that narrowly confined, I mean, obviously you don't have price competition anymore, right? That's why they do very well, but we don't do very well at the grocery store. That was part of, unfortunately what killed us in November was the high cost of groceries. And a big part of that is this kind of consolidation. But luckily the FTC in particular with Chair Lena Khan, she's not going to be she's going to be stepping down with the Trump administration coming in, but she was great. She did a very good job in going after this on behalf of consumers. But we have to be aware this is why we pay so much for things like gasoline or food or other energy costs because of consolidation in industries, airlines. I mean, you look at it when you don't have competition. So all these free market Republicans who don't actually believe in competition, they just believe in rich donors. We need to talk about that a lot more. And, Dean, one of the things we just talked about, we're starting a podcast in January, that I want
Ah,
to do because there's so many issues. I'm not trying to take your gig away, but, there's so many issues that, as talking about more, Medicare Advantage, talking about why we pay more for prescription drugs. There's things that just need a little bit more of an in-depth conversation, maybe from the perspective of someone who's a policymaker. We want to get that information out because, we're getting screwed way too
yeah.
often. The lobbyists here are working on behalf of the rich and powerful interests. We just saw Donald Trump put a bunch of them into his cabinet. Every billionaire he can hit with a stick who wound up in the cabinet somewhere. And we got to fight for us. And we're going to start that fight in January.
What's it going to be? Is it going to be called the Mark Pocan Experience?
No,
Like the
we're
Joe
thinking
Rogan?
of calling it with liberty and justice for some.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I
because
like this. And,
let's
and are
face
you going
it,
to
that's
put
the
it on
problem.
the, I hate to actually discuss the nuts and bolts of it here, but I'm intrigued because I bet you could put it on whatever platforms you want. I would bet you SiriusXM might want to put it on the weekends, but I can't guarantee that. I have
Yeah.
zero power. You might realize this,
All I
but
care about doing is talking about, like you and I have had conversations many times on Gaza. I would love to do a deeper dive than you and I get a chance to
sure.
about, what we've seen for decades and didn't do anything about, and then acted surprised when we saw what, happened in the last year. And, Medicare Advantage, we just had an open enrollment period close. I'll tell you, one of the main complaints we get from people are people who are on this privatized Medicare. It's not Medicare, it's a privatized health plan, but you have to get prior authorization. And this is, we're actually going to introduce legislation on. I'm like in my pissed mode, Dean. So I got lots
Good.
to do in the next year. But one of them is, when they reject millions of people's claims, you don't get that rejected on Medicare. You do on Medicare Advantage. They do it to save a few nickels and dimes. But in the end, when someone does finally appeal it, and not everyone appeals, 85% of those rejections get overturned. So, they're literally putting their consumers' lives at risk just for a few nickels and dimes. We want to introduce legislation that says if you have a higher than 25% reversal rate, you no longer can do Medicare Advantage because clearly you're not a real
That's great.
business. You're just trying to scam people, right? So we're going to start doing more like that. And I think this podcast will help us get some of that information out.
I think that's great. And I just had Tom Hartman on last night, and we talked about this very issue because he just wrote. I know you know Tom well.
Yeah.
Tom just wrote for his Substack just before the deadline, all about comparing Medicare for Medicare Advantage for people so they understand exactly what's going on. And we've talked about this. The word Medicare shouldn't be in this advantage. It should be called
No,
insurance.
but
But
it's
they were able to get that in there.
super smart lobbyists, probably with boats and vacation homes, got that written into the law. And nowhere else do we say you can call yourself the United States Postal Service and pizza delivery, right? You can't use the name of a federal government service, but these private companies are calling themselves Medicare Advantage. I ask in town halls, how many people have Medicare? How many have Medicare Advantage? They don't know. They think they have Medicare because that's what
Right.
they paid into all their life. And this is a substandard product that costs more than Medicare. It was designed to have cost savings that now costs more than Medicare. A majority of people are on this. This is something that just needs some blowing up through information. And that's just like one subject. But think of how many subjects that you and I have talked about over the years that if we could take, 45 minutes to talk about a little more with some of the best national experts and then try to come up with some policy, proposals to help illustrate that. I think there's a nice fit that's needed going into this Republican takeover of the House, Senate, and White House.
Yeah, and yesterday's Tom talked about only about 40% or so of Americans are on Medicare now. They're on
Yeah,
Medicare Advantage, which will make it easier for Republicans to gut real Medicare and go, well, we're
absolutely.
going to put everyone on Medicare Advantage because people don't know the difference. Some do. I mean, I see the commercial all the time and I see the little checkbox. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. One day I'm going to have to make this decision. Not now, but in the future where like,
Yeah,
let's see, well, I get dental and vision. So maybe I'll go with Medicare Advantage when in reality, Medicare should be expanded to give dental,
absolutely.
hearing, and vision for our seniors. It's insane that we don't give the dignity that our seniors deserve by having that. I know we try to expand it and build back better, but Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema had their own agenda along with the
Yeah.
Republicans. So how concerned are you that this Republican administration coming in, this regime will go after Medicare and really try to end
Well,
it as we know it?
Dr. Oz, who's a huge Medicare Advantage beneficiary financially from programs, is going to be in charge of CMS. So they're putting not just the fox in charge of the hen house, they've actually just demolished the hen house, and the fox is just going to sit there and whatever comes by. So we've got to talk about these in ways that people can understand and explain it. And to be fair, there's Democrats that suck too, and we need to make sure that we're making these issues, let's explain them so the public can decide. I've already seen polling on many of these. People, don't want to be ripped off. We saw that with the election. They don't think Democrats fight for them enough. Let's prove that we are the party of FDR, that we really are fighting for them. And the way you do it is by actually doing it. And I think, for many of us, that's what we're looking at with the next Congress. And I think Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies that are going to be running all these agencies is going to be a classic way to talk about how much he really he hoodwinked them. He told them one thing during the election, and he's going to do something that only benefits the people who can afford to go to Mar-a-Lago.
And when you look at the election this year, I mean, we had Elon Musk, the poster boy for oligarchs, now invested. He didn't donate. He invested over
Yeah.
$270 million to help Trump and Republicans. He's threatening to primary Republican senators if they don't do what Trump wants.
Wow.
The cancer of big money in politics has now gotten to the point where it cannot be denied. And polling shows on the right and the left, we want to take big money out of politics because even on the right, they know Elon Musk could switch. He could become a Democrat if it's better for him financially in 2 or 3 years. What do we do? I mean, what can we do to take big money out?
Well, we Democrats did do the right thing around End Citizens United, right?
Right,
Trying to get rid of that ruling and so
right.
corporations aren't people for those purposes. But right now we have another issue that again people don't know about that we got to figure out how to make it very understandable. And I was a journalism major. We're taught to communicate at eighth grade level, so I want to take these things down and explain them. But what we saw APAC and quite honestly crypto money do by trying to buy candidates in primaries, it's a lot cheaper to buy a primary election than a general election. But if we start losing our primaries to the highest bidder, it's tough enough that often the highest bidder wins the generals. But in primaries, they've been very, very successful. I recently had someone at a defense contractor, I won't say who, at the DNC, someone that I knew told me, oh yeah, we're going to start playing in primaries because they see how well APAC and crypto did with that. Well, we're losing our democracy when that happens. So we need to talk about that. And then maybe need to look at some of the states that have had public financing and how much better that works. And let's just start having those conversations with the American people and prove that we really are fighting for them, not the special interest. Because if we try to compete on the money game, that means you have to appeal to every special interest that's out there. And that is not in the best interest of the people. That's part of why we lost in November.
I agree. I'm talking with Congressman Mark Pocan. I'm percolating an idea, and I'm gonna research it over the holidays, and I'll send it to you. But look, we can't overturn Citizens United on our own. We know that, right?
Right.
But we control a lot of states. And the Texas abortion bounty law allowed them to infringe on a right without doing it directly. And I'm trying to think if there's a way with big money to empower private citizens to sue big money donors and go, hey, you can give as much money as you
Yeah.
want. But if you do over an X amount, we allow our private citizens to sue you, and it adds up over time. I'm just trying to think out of the box, because if we're going to wait for the
Yeah.
Supreme Court to be reformed, we'll be our grandchildren be
Right.
talking about it. Like, I mean, there won't be anyone in our lifetime talking about it. So I'm trying to think of something out of the box. And that withstood judicial review. At first, I'm like, this has got to be struck down. They're doing indirectly what they can't do directly, but they were able to keep that. There might be something there where if New York and a few states do this, if you do business in our states, like Elon Musk does business here with
Mhm.
Tesla, then we empower our private citizens to sue you, and you get a guaranteed bounty and legal fees, and there's no limit. So
Yeah.
5,000 citizens can sue you. And that's the only thing I'm thinking of, because we got to do something. This is our democracy is being sold to the highest bidder, and it's a joke. People are going to check out. They see it.
And don't forget about we have many Democratic attorney generals and governors across the country that could also lead on some of this. I know the attorney generals in particular are getting more active in this role, and that's great because they have, one of the biggest ways we're going to have to stop Trump is we don't have the votes legislatively right now, but we do have the legal process, right? And we can have the lawsuits that need to happen to slow him down. So again, I think it's all on board, every possible way we can try to do these things, but some of it really is information. I mean, I've been in Washington for 12 years now, and I get a lot of the info being a member of Congress, but I know people back home don't always see that. And on something like Medicare Advantage, I never knew that until I got here. What a scam. Like that is like it's twice as profitable as normal health insurance. No wonder they don't want to give it up. But this is absolutely no excuse for killing a health insurance executive.
Right.
Look at the response from people who realize they've been screwed over by insurance companies around healthcare. You're seeing it. It's really out there, and we need to grab that energy and fight for all of us. And I think even with a Republican president and White House, there's ways that we can move the ball forward on this, and we got to start doing it right away in January.
The last time I looked, the number one cause of bankruptcy in America was healthcare costs.
Yeah.
That's what drives people to bankruptcy. That's the number one thing. It's not bad business decisions. It's that you got sick and your health insurance company screwed you over, or people, if they didn't have health insurance, that's one thing. But those that did have it, and you saw United Healthcare have like a 32% claims denial, the highest in the country.
Yeah.
And not everyone has a lawyer. I used to be a lawyer. I worked in a big insurance company. We represented health insurance companies pre-ACA. And I didn't, in a big firm, we weren't working on little cases with people, but it was bigger issues about how to prevent people from getting their claims paid and how to protect the companies from bad faith claims, because there are bad faith claims that expose a corporation, a health insurance company, to even more in terms of damages. That was the big thing we worked on
Yeah.
for them. I still feel dirty about it. It was, 20 something years ago.
But you know what? All of this conversation is going to lead us to the one undeniable fact is that we are the only industrialized nation on the planet that doesn't have universal health care. And, that ultimately is going to be the answer. But let's get all this information out. Let's create more of a dialogue. We know that I think something like 45% of swing voters do not get their news from the traditional way that, the nightly news sort of thing that people get. We got to find every way to get this information out. That means, not just the radio that you're doing, but podcasts. That means taking advantage of social media in the most unique and new ways. And I think that's one thing Democrats have woken up to, and you're going to see us doing more of.
I have a new statistic. 90% of Democrats get their news from the Dean Obeidallah show. I just made that up. So it's huge. How can anyone not come on my show?
Exactly.
90% of Democrats get their news from this show between 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern time every night. Is kind of, but I will say this though, as cable news ratings have dropped, both CNN and MSNBC, and they have not come back yet. And there's usually a drop after the election, but this is more stark. What has gone up is people going to Blue Sky. That's a Substack. My subscribers have gone way up, and it's free. It's my newsletter. People want to give me money. I'm happy to, when they want to subscribe that way too, but it's free. People are looking for voices they view as credible. Like
Yeah.
I'm not corporate media. I mean, we happen to be on corporate media, but I'm not going to both sides fascism or genocide or bigotry or racism. I refuse. I'll never do that. I'll just write my Substack. And no one at SiriusXM ever made us do that. That's the beauty of this place. And so I think people are looking for voices, whoever they are, that they believe are credible, like our buddy Tom Hartman or
Yeah.
Stephanie Miller or everyone on the channel. John Few was saying the whole list of everyone here. We don't both sides anything. And that's got to die. It's
Yeah.
misinformed people and normalized a monster like Donald Trump to get back in office.
Yeah, and we got to call him out on all his bullshit because we got to remember the 4 years. Remember how many times did we have infrastructure week and we never had an infrastructure bill? Donald Trump will say he's going to do a lot and not do as much, but the stuff he's going to do is damaging. We just got to be ready for all of that and call him out because that next year is the tax bill is going
Yeah.
to come through and they'll do it through reconciliation to get around the Senate rules. And it is going to be the biggest money grab from working people to the rich that we have ever seen in this country. I pretty much guarantee it from everything we're hearing. We've got to be ready to fight for that, or else it will be for a decade. We're just going to enrich the wealthiest and take it away from the average person, despite what Donald Trump promised and what he'll say he did. We got to get those facts out.
And is one of the ways they're going to pay for it interfering with Social Security? I'm not going to say gut. I don't want to scare people, but raise the retirement age or,
That's a
the
cut. That's a cut to
Republican.
Social
Yeah,
Security.
I mean, there are Republicans talking now openly about we have to put Social Security on the table. I don't know exactly what they mean. I think it's almost a third rail in politics, but talking to Tom Hartman, he thought the analogy is Social Security advantage, where they allow privatization, and that's one
Yeah,
way to do this.
right. Well, and I mean, don't forget, Elon Musk is not a political mastermind. I mean, let's face it, he inherited a bunch of money from what? Emerald mines and basically slave labor. And every company he's bought, he hasn't started. He's not like he's a brilliant guy. He's just a guy who's got a lot of money. But rich people, I find, think they're brilliant. And he clearly thinks he's brilliant. So if he comes up with this, if he says we don't need Social Security and Medicare, we need to make sure that we fully make sure that we understand the co-president, the guy who bought Donald Trump back into office, is the one who's proposing this, and Republicans will be saying that we should raise the age. We've all paid into Social Security and Medicare our entire lives as a earned benefit so that it's ready for us when we want to. Government's held that funds. And if they try to take it away by raising the age you can access it or anything else that they might come up with, those should be fighting words, and we got to get in the streets on it.
Well, we absolutely do. And I'm hoping people will do that. And that's the key to keep people engaged now. And I'm really happy. Like at first I thought people were checking out and I think people needed to regroup, but I notice now they're leaning back in. They're just not leaning in the places they did before. So it's not showing up on MS ratings. It's showing up on our shows where we have our call volume now is off the charts. Like it's really kind of remarkable. Yeah. I thought people were going to drop off. I'm like, oh, this is going to be just like, please call the show. And that's not happening. So, well, Congressman, thank you, my friend. It's always great chatting with you. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you and your listeners.
And I look forward to your podcast. And sincerely, we can talk off air with your team. Maybe SiriusXM would, if you so wanted it, on the weekends, there's a lot of room on Progress. And maybe it's something that could be a good fit.
All that's probably above my pay grade. What I care about is I just want to get it going. I've wanted to do this for a while, and we're just doing it now. Finally, we're going to get it going in January. But there are so many subjects that after being here 12 years and I don't see movement on them, and we know that people would hate. If you really know about Medicare Advantage, you'd be outraged, right?
Sure.
You don't know the background of the details, so we have to help provide that information. If you know that why we pay more for prescription drugs than any other country and that we are being ripped off, even though our tax dollars have financed every drug that's come to market in the last 20 years through the NIH, you should be outraged. We need to get some of that information out so that we can actually turn the dial towards the average person.
Maybe outrage should be in the title of it. You should be outraged with Mark Pocan. I mean, there you go. And this is every week.
We don't have the official name yet. I just like with liberty and justice for some, because I think, that is the problem ultimately. There's great American promise, but we're not there. We can get there. I am optimistic. I'm a half full guy, but we got to make sure people understand right now what's happening.
I agree. Thanks, Congressman. Nice chatting with you.
Yep.